good to be back doing another one of these late night things. Not quite midnight here in Colorado. It's midnight Central Time and eastward of there. 10 p.m. on the West Coast, and of course 11 o'clock here in Colorado. I'm psyched to be doing a live tonight because we have a very interesting time upon us. Astrologically speaking, with this new moon that we have coming tomorrow night, and really the energy's already started. The energy started for me last night. I want to talk about that a little bit. But what we have right now is Pluto conjuncting the South Node. This happens about once every 18 years. So this is some major shit. It's a major opportunity, and it can be a bit of a crisis. Take a second to say what's up to everybody. So many people already in chat. That's super dope. I'm going to interact more because I'm not just giving a lecture today. So hello to everybody. If you wave to me, I'll wave back. I may not hit the wave button, but I'll wave with my hand. And if you guys got questions and stuff or comments, because I know there's many knowledgeable and skillful practitioners. See, someone's waving, I'm waving back. There's many knowledgeable and skillful practitioners hanging out right now. So let's have a discussion. You know what I'm saying? So what's going on right now? The Pluto is conjunct the South Node. What the hell does this mean? Okay, so Pluto is like the purging of old garbage, so to speak. The metaphor that I have that's so perfect because this Pluto action's kind of been happening, right? A couple weeks ago, the sewage backed up in my basement. I was freaking out. What's going on? And then when I actually took a closer look, it was gross stuff, but it was the way. Then there was like stuff backing up, but it was the waste from like the old pot grow that I had in my basement that I didn't dispose of properly. It was my old garbage backing up for me to clear it the right way. And I had to go clean my whole basement and all this shit, right? So that's exactly Pluto energy, right? It's the old garbage coming back up. Pluto's the lord of the underworld, right? So it's that old shit. Okay. So what's the South Node? The South Node is like our past karmic history and where we're coming from. So when you combine these two things, that purging and your past karmic history, some heavy shit comes out. And again, it's an 18-year cycle. So I didn't even put much of this together, but last night I was just kind of in a weird mood. Found myself listening to music that I haven't listened to in about 20 years, 18 years. Really angry music and being in touch with how angry I was when I was 19 years old and all this stuff, and how isolated and how, just how I felt then. And the weirdest thing happened because all of a sudden, and it's so interesting that Pluto is like the underworld because of this. All of a sudden, it was like I was looking back on, I guess you could say, the past 18 years, but with a clear eye to that point 18 years ago, and seeing it, like looking down on this very twisty road. So that, when you're going through the road, you twist left, you twist right, you don't really know, you're just following the bends of the road. You see it from above. If you can look down later, when you get to the sort of end and you're up on some mountain looking back, you clearly see the road and you see all the twists and you see where mistakes were made, and it was just the strangest thing, and you see how it all connects. And that was the weird thing, seeing how it all connects. And I'm still processing, and I think a lot of us are going to go through this. But then from that point of connection, realizing that because it's all connected to them, like even now, even you today, even you this second, and like even your fears now and your anxieties now and your worries and your hardships now are connected to then, and releasing that. That's what this whole new moon's about. That's what tonight's about. Tomorrow night, if you're planning workings, that's what will be served in these workings. And it's going to happen. Certainly, if you're watching this chat and you're, a spiritually attuned person and you're paying attention to these things, it's going to happen for you either way, whether you do a working or not. That said, you can put your intention into it with a working and not be an innocent bystander. I might just be an innocent bystander on this one myself, because this is actually, it's pretty profound to go into it and just submitting to it. You know, I think that's where we get the lessons we maybe want the most but don't need the most. Or sorry, need the most but don't want the most. But if you want the lessons you want the most, or if you're just like struggling to make sense of stuff, which I think is definitely in the air, going in to do a working with intention tonight, tomorrow night's excellent, is a great thing to do. So maybe we could talk a little bit about a working I would do, or maybe some ingredients or materia that I would use in a working like that. I did one of these in July, and it was personally profoundly transformative. And maybe I'll dig that up and post it to the Patreon, because I think I saved it all. It dredged up long forgotten memories from early childhood that really kind of blew my mind and changed my understanding of myself and my life. And that's what this is about, right? Like that. This is about that ability to make sense of your life. Let me pause and say this another way. So, like, when traumatic shit happens to us, we repress it, especially if it's early in life. We repress it. Nonetheless, we live in response to it. Our fears and our anxieties and our reactions are connected to it. And when our behavior, our reactions, our fears, our anxieties, all this stuff doesn't match our reality, that is, like, because we repressed it, it's not part of our reality, so our behavior is not matching it. When that's the case, we just get into this angst, this depression, this, like, we can't hold both. We reject part of ourselves. Okay, this is where a lot of, this gets to a lot of shadow work, right? So, meaning, if we're traumatized in such a way that our trust was severely violated at an early age, okay, and therefore we don't trust people, maybe we're a little paranoid, okay, going through life and not remembering that violation, it's like, why am I paranoid? Am I crazy? What's going on? And then anxiety builds on that alone, right? The anxiety over, why am I this way? And what's wrong? And is there something wrong with me? And all this, when in fact it's a totally rational response to something you just don't remember. Your brain remembers, your consciousness doesn't, right? Like your autonomic system, right? Your somatic processing in your body, all that remembers what that felt like and will never forget it unless you do some really intentional work. But you don't remember it. And because you don't remember it, you can't make sense of it. And because you can't make sense of it, it's a source of serious angst. Like, you don't understand what's going on. So this is a time to connect back. And again, you can connect back 18 years, 36 years. It's an 18-year cycle, right? So working in that regard. And these are big patterns. And because the other thing to also think about in these times, and this is I think part of why I wanted to do a live, really, and get with everyone and have a chat, because, like, while you're going through this and while I'm going through this, and it's a really, like, deep, personal, like, introspective thing, and it's so long ago, right? Like, 18 years ago, I certainly didn't know my kids, I didn't know my wife, like, I didn't know really any of my current friends. It was a lifetime ago, So it's very hard to connect with the people in our lives. But they're going through it too on their own level. So it's just a very strange and heavy time. But it's a time that promises to lead to something excellent from here. For those of us who take the opportunity, right? It's a real opportunity to clear a load of heavy karma. And interestingly, like, I get upset, as you guys know, when people use the term karma to mean, like, you do bad and bad happens to you. Because that's not what karma technically means. It's somewhat encompassed in it, but karma is the clinging, right? Karma is the holding on to the delusion that is mind. You know, all mind, all your own thoughts that just spin, and all my own, not just yours, certainly mine. You know, and this and that, and then you have this thought and it triggers that emotion, and then that leads you to think this way, and then you think about that and that triggers that emotion, and then, you know, that attachment to that, the attachment to that delusion is karma. Okay, so this chance to clear karma that we have now is the chance to clear that, to clear those delusions, our attachments to those delusions, and it may not even be clearing them. It may be putting them in a perspective that we can approach them differently. Meaning, well, in the case of something where like there's a memory that we haven't accessed, or we an emotional experience that at the time we repressed and didn't deal with, right? So it never ran its course through our body's processing system. Like our bodies physically process as our minds process and emotions. And if either side, and our spirit in turn, and if any one of those stops, gets blocked, sort of shuts down from having to deal with the trauma, the other ones stop too. And so when you deal with old psychological trauma, you feel it move through your body. When you deal with old physical trauma, you have psychological emotions released. Same with spirit on both of those, you know? So this is a time for us to even just start to see the connections, or completely release from these things. But the point is taking an honest look at ourselves, taking a compassionate look, and going back in experientially into that time period. Again, this is 18 years ago. And it'll be that for all of us. That's, you know, just the movement of the planet. So I was 19 years old then. You were however old you were. But think to then. And think of your pain then. It may not have been a lot of pain. It may have been a great deal of pain. And think of your pain now. And see where their connection is. Because this is your chance to do some real healing there. And it's not going to come again for another 18 years. So that's the power of this time. That's the power of this new moon that we have while the South Node is conjunct Pluto. And I have to thank many of my friends here on Instagram who've taught me all this astrology stuff, because it's not a domain I'm trained in, you know, or whatever I've studied in traditionally. So it's very cool to be learning this stuff, because it's, as soon as I started paying attention to it, I started seeing it. I started questioning whether I have free will, to be honest with you. So I don't know if any of you guys are experiencing anything that you want to talk about or have questions about. If not, I do have to riff on a few things as well. Or whatever. I don't know if you guys just like are doing other things or what. So cool thing, tomorrow night, Friday, if you're in the Denver area, come down to Ritual Craft. I am teaching my first class. Very excited. My altar workings class. I got my PowerPoint all done. I was very nervous as a double Virgo. Until the PowerPoint is done, I am extremely nervous about any public speaking encounter. But obviously that's done. I'm not worried anymore. The PowerPoint's a very important part of every double Virgo's ability to communicate. So yes, the PowerPoint is done. It is super dope. The class is altar workings for beginners, though I think there is something in there even for a seasoned practitioner and a seasoned altar worker. I try to kind of look at, as I do, you know, try to look at theories and big concepts and then work down from there. And yeah, I'm really excited to be giving it. I'm really excited to, I don't know how many people are signed up, but I know there are still more seats. So if you're in Colorado, heck, if you know someone in Colorado, send them down. I am hoping to have it taped. They're taped. No one uses tape anymore. Recorded. I have a videographer friend, and I think we got the schedule worked out. And then maybe we'll be able to edit in the visuals. I don't know. But that'll go up probably on Ritual Craft School online, which is at ritualcraft.com. For those of you who can't attend in person. Attending in person, obviously, the dopest way to do it, because then there's a whole Q&A part, and that's where it helps. So that is dope. Additionally, and where I'm going to jabber from, and thank you everyone for the congratulations, very kind. Genevieve, that's awesome that we're both teaching tomorrow. You're right, new moon, new year, and as you know, Aries is the first astrological sign, so this is the first moon of the new year. We have Passover coming up, Easter coming up. This is a time of renewal, redemption, of liberation. We see spring. Obviously, this is all connected to spring and the rebirth of nature after winter, and we see it. We see it obviously in our lives. So it's a blessing to be able to do it. I'm very grateful to everyone at Ritualcraft, especially Loretta, the Death Witch, who has been asked me to do it and has been motivating me to do it and has sort of moved mountains to be able to get me to do it. So follow her if you don't. She's at the Death Witch, and she's awesome. She runs the conjure department over there, and she runs the school along with Missy, who's at Ritualcraft. So yeah. Now, why I've been jabbering about that is because next week I'm giving a class every week. This is a lot of PowerPoints, you guys. So next week I'm giving my second class, and next week's class is my first conjure class. So I'm very excited about that. It is Conjuration for beginners. It is intended to be work in the principle specifically of conjuring. It's not a comprehensive class on the practice we call conjure, hoodoo, conjure. There are more classes in this series. I am going to try to cover everything through all the classes, and it's so much, it's really hard to break it down topically and still cover it. That's one of the challenges. It's very hard to put these traditions into a PowerPoint, but nonetheless, that is my play. I must. So, the conjure class is on conjuration, and I've talked about it before on here. I've talked about it on the Patreon videos, but I will talk about it now because this is how I prepare myself to make all these PowerPoints. I jabber on here, and I get your guys' feedback, and I make a class. So, I want to talk first about the word conjure, which comes from the Latin, con, together, jure, bind. To bind together by an oath or an agreement is what to conjure means. And that is at the heart of every working I do. I may bind different things together. It may be a different type of an oath or an agreement. But every working I do, more or less, is a conjuration. And I'm just going to give some examples to explain what I mean. Let's say real basic, relatively common working. Let's say I'm blessing St. Michael medals for you lovely folks, right? So there's multiple conjurations in that one working. Okay, so first, all the ingredients that I'm going to, my process for this is I would, do my conjurations. I'm going to say what I got to say, anoint it with oil, and then pack it in the appropriate herbs and things like that, right? Materia. Excuse me. So, before I get started, I'm going to do a conjuration with my materia, my various ingredients, if you will. I'm going to make a deal with those things, different deals, to get them to work for me in this job. It's just, in this regard, it's very much like running a small business. Whatever the fuck small business you want to think of, right? You got to hire people, and then you hire those people to manage other people. You know what I mean? Like, you make different types of deals with different people or different entities to achieve a larger combined result. Right? You're not making the exact same deal with everybody you're working with. Really, everything in business, right? You have your vendors, you have your employees, and you have your customers. And those are all different types of deals, right? You're making different types of deals with all those people or all those entities to move a process through. Very similar. Excuse me. I'm gonna drink something because my throat is. I got a little tickle. So, blessing St. Michael's medals. First, conjure with the materia. Then, I conjure with St. Michael. I say St. Michael, the deal I make there is that he recognize these medals as dedicated to him and grant his protection to whosoever should wear them. On my part, I got to do what I'm doing. Candles, prayers, etc. Service is typically what Michael likes. So there's 2 conjurations just in that. And that is a necklace, you know. Everything I do, a mojo hand. Okay. I'm going to give this bag, I'm going to assemble its components, essentially the organs of its body, and then I'm going to give it the breath of life. I'm going to grant it my spirit. Then, because I have its attention, because I'm its creator, just as God with Adam in Genesis, I'm going to give it something more, whether it's whiskey or cologne or whatever. And since I'm taking care of it, I'm going to ask for it to take care of me, or take care of whoever I'm giving it to. And if you've ever gotten a hand from me, indeed you know, I tell you how to take care of the hand and how to communicate with it and make a relationship that is truly a conjuration where you are bound together in that relationship. Now, we could talk further even in oil lamp. Okay, in an oil lamp, I conjure with all the materia, and then I conjure with the spirit of the lamp. And we talk about candle working. Depending on the type of candle working I'm doing, I'll typically be conjuring with the materia, an interceding spirit in some form or another, and potentially a target's spirit. If you're doing altar work, saint work, then you're conjuring with the saint and potentially materia as well. So everything in these traditions is a conjuration. It's transactional. In the ways I work that are in sort of the hoodoo conjure tradition, the types of relationships. It's actually interesting because I work in a couple traditions and there's different relationships. This is something worth talking about, right? So, in the hoodoo tradition, the relationships are, derived from traditional relationships in the African cultures that the work is derived from, The Yoruba culture being a highly interactive trading culture, and everything that comes with Yoruba practice that we see in Orisha tradition in terms of an almost social relationship, that sort of binding together a conjuration where you're throwing a party for a spirit and it's going to come and be received and have all these lovely things, and then you're going to ask it to do some things. The other aspect is like the Congo tradition, which we see in a mojo hand is a very Congo practice, in catching a spirit and commanding it, training it. So those are 2 paradigms of conjuration. And I would say that like the limit of a conjuration is really the paradigm, just like a negotiation in business, right? Like the limit of what a negotiation can be, what a contract could be, is what you can come up with. There's no rules. You can make whatever deal that both parties agree is fair, and that's where creativity is important. So, now, looking at Jewish magic, right, the types of conjurations that are involved are very legalistic. They cite scripture as precedent, and they establish certain facts, and therefore make things happen. And I'm thinking here mostly of like exorcisms or conjurations with spirits to get rid of them. Usually Jewish magic, well, really prayer is a conjuration. When we pray to God, we recognize make God exist to some extent, right? Like that's Martin Buber, Spinoza, like that's the thing. Like God depends on man's prayer. So having that relationship, that's why we pray the way we pray, right? Like that's why we basically, like, we're not just, hey God, I need this. No. We say, hey God, and then we big up God for like a long time before we tell God how great God is, and whatever spirit, you know what I mean? We pronounce their titles, as in an invocation. We give them energy, the energy of our respect and our admiration. Okay? We give them the energy of our devotion in our prayer. And in exchange for that, they give us what we're asking for, right? That's how that's a conjuration. So even prayer is a conjuration. Even just everything. Any energy exchange is a conjuration because you're bound together because it's an exchange, right? And that's it. It's relational. So when I talk about conjuration, that's why I use that broad term to encompass so much. And we see conjuration at the heart of all magic. Not just folk magic, not just hoodoo, conjure, whatever. You see conjuration at the heart of ritual magic even. It's a different type of agreement. Right? In ritual magic, it's really kind of more like a threat, right? Like, all right, listen, demon, whoever, you do this, and I'm not going to fuck you up with this or that or this name or that. It's a different type of agreement, but it's an agreement nonetheless, and you're bound together in it. Indeed, as I was talking to... Again, if you guys are interested in ritual magic and Solomonic magic, follow at the Peacock Grimoire. Samuel is the man. He's my source, my teacher for all this stuff. And in one translation, in sort of an esteemed translation of the Keys of Solomon, they say that the sorcerer, the magician, and the demon are inside the circle together. Not that like the sorcerer's in the circle and then the demon's outside. No, they're in there together. That's the liminal space that they share. So, again, talk about conjuring being sort of binding together in agreement or in relation. Yeah, you have everything constrained. So, the basic idea is that everything is relational and everything is transactional. That's conjuration, and that's why the work's called Conjure. So this class is coming, like I said, next Tuesday at Ritual Craft, and then we'll also have that one. I'm almost certain I'll be able to get filmed and put up. I'm really excited for that one, and just teaching the principles of conjuration, because you conjure once you know the paradigms of conjuration, and you know sort of the restrictions and the limitations of conjuration, and you know a few different approaches to take. Again, it's just like negotiation with a human being. You just need to know, I have a negotiation strategy, and if I go into any negotiation, I can really flexibly handle that and get a good result generally. Results that seem fucking impossible and crazy to everyone else. We both by the end agreed to. And so that's the same thing when you're conjuring with a spirit. Being sensitive to what... Man, I'm just going to go over what actually, I might do this in the course. So for, business negotiation... And hey to everyone who's tuning in. Ed's Manifesto's in the room. Pleasure, sir. Honor. Looking forward to meeting you when you're out here in Denver. Zach Horton. Yes, come down to the class. And come down tomorrow, too. Egyptian Black Gold. What's up? It's good to see everyone tuning in tonight. I'm talking conjuration, because that's the class I'm giving next week. And again, tomorrow I'm doing the class on altar workings. That one's going to be real fun. I think we're going to have a pretty tight group, and we can get pretty deep in some stuff. So I'm excited for that. Damn, tickle in my throat. So why I want people. Oh, so negotiation and how to approach a negotiation with a human or a spirit. You know, I foresaw it as the acronym: interests, factual or financial research, options, rapport. I forget what the fuck the E stands for. Setting. I'll remember what the E is and come back to it. Ethics is E. It's funny that I forgot that. Setting. What's the A? I'll remember what the A is. W is who. I. The second I is. I can't remember that. And then targets is the last one. So for the real class, I'll have it. But it's a structured way of thinking about when you're going into this. It is. Okay, so let me tell you a common thing that happens for a conjurer, especially when you're just getting started. Because you're not sure if it's going to work. Okay, so you get going, you set up, you got your altar all set up, start going through the conjuration, you call the spirit, and then it responds. And you didn't necessarily 100% expect it to respond. So, okay, so now the spirit's responded, and you're checking if this is really true. That's the first thing that everyone does, right? Like, okay, well, if you're really here, show me in the candle flames. All right, well, if you're really, really here, give me another sign. You know, you go through this silliness because you don't believe yourself because it's your first time. And then you get to the part where you're supposed to ask something and you have no idea. You kind of just have like a general thing you're gonna ask, you know. Can you help me pay my rent? You know, that's, you haven't thought about it, and it's just like going into a negotiation with a human being without thinking about it. If they're cagey, they'll fucking eat you alive. It's the same with a spirit, and spirits have had more time, and they're cagier. They know more tricks. Okay. This is why we hear about trickster spirits. They're just excellent negotiators, or they are savvy enough to take advantage of a poor negotiator and have no qualms about it, right? They have to abide by the terms. And you have to be sure that you can make them abide by the terms. You guys know the one ritual tool I insist you have. I don't care if you have a wand. I don't care if you have pentacles. I don't care if you have the seals of Solomon. I don't care about any other. I don't care if you have elemental representations. I don't even fucking care if you have candlesticks. I don't care if you have an altar cloth. You better have an iron knife. Iron or a steel knife. That's the one tool you need. Everything else is very nice to have and has its place. You need an iron knife because at the end of the day, you have to be able to enforce that deal. Just like if you're going to make a business thing and you don't have a lawyer, you can't take them to court, you can't fucking punish them for that. What's the point of having an agreement? What's the point of having the negotiation? What's the point of conjuring? Okay? We all do it in good faith. But if you don't know the reputation of the other party, you have to be prepared to enforce. If you do know the reputation of the other party, then there's that. And if you have a relationship with the other party, an ongoing relationship with the other party, then you're really getting to the heart of conjuration. Because that, for a lot of our work, look, a lodestone, right? You feed your lodestone so it feeds you. Mojo hand, keep feeding your mojo hand so it feeds you. Your altar, your spirits, right? You offer to them so they take care of you. All these things, right? It's an ongoing relationship. And I'll be real, like, I suck at it. I am not good at. I don't feed my lodestone as regularly as I should. I don't attend to my things as regular. I have too much going on, and I am not as focused as I would like to be. I wish I could check in every single day on every deal I've got going with spiritually speaking. It's not the case, but it's not the case in business either. And when you look at how it ends up being in business, you know, the bigger venture is, the more deals they'll have going. And you know, you monitor them all, and you try to optimize them all, and you check in on them all periodically. But if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. So that's what I would say. So I want to check in chat real quick. Torian Chick, An athame, yeah. I mean, I'm not Wiccan, so I don't call it that. It's a knife. It's a knife. I have you. I mean, my knife. But before I got that awesome black handled knife made, I just used a railroad spike knife. I actually rather like railroad spike knives. They're cheap. They're iron, and they feel good in the hand. They're good for smashing. They're good for cutting, and they've got that energy. They've got that energy of the train coming through, which is, I'm not going to speak on Orisha stuff, but that kinetic energy, that frictive energy of the wheel of the train, all that. It's fire and it's metal and it's a good energy to have in a weapon, right? So yeah, my failsafe is the coffin nail I have in my hat always. Like, that's if I don't have my knife on me, or for some reason if I have no knives on me, which is weird, but if I had no steel or no iron on me, if I only had sort of non-metallic knives, I would have my coffin nail in a spiritual situation. So you got to be able to enforce your conjuration, just like you have to be able to enforce a contract. It's the same, and that's the worst case scenario. You plan, you should be prepared for that worst case scenario, but you should plan and go into your conjuration to create the best case scenario. And to do that is a matter of understanding what the other party's interests are, right? Like, what does that spirit want? And we'll give the example. This one's definitely going to be part of my necromancy class, which is in June 17th. That one is, which is the anniversary of my near-death experience, which is I picked that date, and they were really awesome at giving me that one. So if you can come to Denver for June 17th, Necromancy 101 is going to be a fucking awesome class. But the anecdote on this one, which I told on a recent video, is about William, a spirit I work with, William R. Bloor. When I went to the cemetery looking for a soldier's grave, I saw his, among plenty of others. He was a cavalryman, sergeant, and I thought, okay, officer, cool. And when I went to his grave, immediately, I felt grief, guilt, like real angsty guilt. And so I just started praying Our Fathers. And I had brought oranges, and I had like little oranges, and I had brought candles. And I peeled an orange, and I dug a hole. First I introduced myself, I knocked on the headstone, introduced myself, dug a hole at the top of the grave. And I did not take the dirt yet. I just sort of set that dirt aside. And I buried oranges for him. I shared an orange with him. Greeted myself. And that's when I really just felt that grief, that guilt, that heaviness. I buried that orange for him. And I tried to light a candle for him. And it would just not light. And I was like building all kinds of contraptions with like all kinds of like walls with the dirt, and I took the orange and I had peeled the orange, so I like took the orange peeled and reassembled it with a candle in the middle and trying to get it to work. And I'm just praying these Our Fathers, Our Father who art in heaven, over, and I feel it after probably 20, 30 of them. I just feel it loosen, and the candle stays lit. And I'm able to put the whole orange around it. Now it turns into a great burning lamp. And I'm praying these Our Fathers. It ended up being, I got there, I want to say the hour of Jupiter, and then it ended up being the hour of Saturn. And I knew I was going to a soldier's grave at the hour of Saturn. Or I want to say the hour of Mars, maybe, because I wanted the dirt in the hour of Mars. Regardless, I knew I was coming up on a contentious spirit. So I was just praying, And when I prayed it, and that was the other thing, is when I prayed the Our Fathers, So our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Didn't really have a resonance. But forgive us our trespasses, I felt it respond to that. So I was like, there's some guilt on this spirit. So I kept praying the Our Fathers, and I felt it yielded. The flame stayed lit. The presence became hospitable. At that point, I asked if I could take dirt and offered payment. And I brought him whiskey and I brought him a cigar. And that was fine. I researched it. And just like I said in the last live, like you got a fucking computer in your pocket. You should research every grave you're taking dirt from. So I researched the guy, and turns out he was involved in the Sand Creek Massacre, which was when a bunch of cavalrymen massacred a bunch of native women and children. So then I understood why his soul had so much guilt on it. This is later in his life. He'd already been established, and he went Civil War era, signed up for the army, ended up being in this massacre. And it was his only thing he did in the army was this massacre. You can imagine what that does to the psyche and to the spirit. So, knowing that this was on his spirit, I saw an opportunity for that conjuration. And this is the point of the story. The deal I made with William at that time was I took the dirt from his grave to a different church every night for a month, full, till the moon was full. And it was waning moon when I picked it up. So it was about, 3.5 weeks. Every night I went to a different church and prayed Our Fathers over it for half an hour to bring peace and elevate his spirit. That's the fundamental conjuration I have with him. That's why we're homies. Right? Like, that's why I can... Now we make individual deals now all the time, right? Like, do this for me, I'll come bring some whiskey to your grave, or I'll give you some whiskey. I have his dirt, so I'll give you some whiskey, give you whatever. But, like, that's aligning interests, right? Understanding what does that spirit want. We get this idea when we learn spiritual work from books and the internet, and static things. We get the idea that this shit's one size fits all. That, spirits like alcohol, and spirits like tobacco, and spirits like whatever. Those are things spirits can like, just like people. What do people like? People like alcohol, people like tobacco, people like whatever. But not everybody likes all those things. And not everybody likes all types of those things. Right? Like, if you go to a non-smoker with a cigar, it's a very nice gesture, but they're not going to appreciate it as nearly as much as someone who's really into cigars. They're really going to appreciate it, right? Like, you give me whiskey, I don't really like whiskey. I'm not going to appreciate it. You give it to my buddy Kyle. Kyle loves whiskey, right? You give Kyle a nice whiskey, he'll really be excited for it. So it's the same, vice versa. If you give Kyle a rare occult book, he would say thank you, but would never look at it. If you give me a rare occult book, I'm fucking over the moon. So it's interest. It's what do they like? Okay? That's the first thing to know in a conjuration. The second is that factual, in business, is factual and financial research. But factual research, know the spirit. If it's a spirit of the deceased, know them, like Google them. If it's a saint, know their story. If it's a root, know it. Know its smell, know its flavor, know where it grows, know what it looks like, know that root. Do your research. Don't just go in. If it's a demon, read your Goetia, Tutorian chick, yes, always I do either 3 shiny pennies. I didn't do hard candy because this is my theory on this shit, okay? Because people who were alive, I think, in the 1860s would taste today's fucking corn syrup garbage candy and think it's disgusting. And I don't know where to get, like, old-timey licorice. That's another, you go later to who you're dealing with, right? Like, what is this spirit accustomed to? What is it comfortable with? What will it find comforting? What will it find upsetting? What will it find appeasing? What will it find irritating? You can use both. You can irritate through a conjuration, right? That's classic hoodoo, right? You get graveyard dirt of someone who just got buried. You go before it rains, and you go down about your elbow, and you get that graveyard dirt from right over the coffin, and you put that in a bag with hot pepper, right? And you shake it up, and they're still disoriented because they just got buried. They don't really know their way around it. And you're irritating them with that hot pepper. And you tell them to go get you whatever money you need, and then once it's done, you put it in a piece with holy water and put it back in the grave. So that's a very Congo way of working. But that's another way to do a conjuration. It doesn't have to just be nice. I prefer it, especially when it's an unknown quantity, right? Like if it's a spirit that I don't know, rando in the graveyard, fuck, I don't know who I'm fucking with. Better, easier. So, I think then you gotta consider. So Ed's Manifesto, awesome dropping folk knowledge here. Day of the Dead, you have to know what they like. Yeah, it's a yearly conjuring for most Mexicans, definitely. And ancestor reverence in general is a conjuration. It's a continuation of that relationship, and that's why I always say, you pray. You should pray for your ancestors before you pray to your ancestors, because they've already given you. They've given you your life. They've given you everything. So on that relationship, like, you got to pay in before you ask for more out. They want you to succeed in all that. They don't want to withhold blessings, generally speaking. But in every deal, it's good to start off in any relationship on a show of good faith. Mexican Coke is good. I forget what they're called. Piloncillo, maybe? It's like just a piece of like brown sugar cane. Like this is good. Again, and it depends on the grave you're going to also, and it depends on it's all about what that spirit wants. I usually roll with like a couple types of tobacco and a few different kinds of booze. I'll get little shooter bottles, okay? I'll go to the liquor store and get, especially if I'm going with older spirits, they do this Jack Daniel old time rye that the old, 19th century spirits like. It's old fashioned. And that they seem to like really good. Or you don't get too crazy with it, depending on whose spirit. Look, if you're trying to conjure with the spirit of a frat boy, go get your fucking Jägermeister and your Fireball and all that. But don't bring that to a Civil War hero. That's what I'm saying. And these things are not all equivalent. I think it's... Look, I really respect all the posts that happen on Instagram that say you don't need this or that to do the work right. You don't need it, but don't use the fucking wrong thing. It's better to use nothing than the wrong thing for all this stuff. It's better to use nothing than the wrong thing. So other conjurations, anything where you're working with a spirit, like whether a saint, an angel, devil, a demon, anything in between. Jinn magic is all conjuration, from what I know, and I hope to learn more about that in the immediate future. That's like a next topic of study for me. But it's funny too, because as I was saying, even ritual magic is technically a conjuration. It's just a much more one-sided one. Right? It's not a very friendly, amicable relationship. It's okay, first of all, you get your ass over here, and now you do what the fuck I say, or I've got this rod of correction, or I've got this knife, or I've got these holy names, and I'll send your ass to hell. So how's it going to be? It's this very rich white guy way of conjuring. But it's a conjuration nonetheless. Okay? Folk magic, and specifically the sort of focus of the course that I will be doing, folk magic's defined by being sort of very different than that, by being much more democratic's not the word, egalitarian is the word. We meet spirit on a plane of respectful equality, just as I try to meet every person, right? Like I don't really give a fuck who you are. I'm gonna respect you and meet you as my equal. Then it can change, but that's how we meet. That's in the folk magic tradition how we interact with spirit. Whether it's again the spirit of an entity, a divinity, a saint, something like this, or the spirit of a root. There's a sense, especially in how I work, that these are they're kindred, they're all distant cousins of me, of us. We're all distant cousins, and they're all slightly more distant cousins. But and that seems silly, right? But think about the totality of the universe. And let's just talk about roots, like what you and a fucking High John the Conqueror root have in common. In the totality of the universe, you are both carbon-based life forms on Earth. You got more in common than most of the shit in the universe has in common. You're distant cousins already, okay? Animals and plants, if you go far enough back, you both got DNA, so you're both the same shit on some level. So, depending on how loosely you take the term cousin, right? Yeah. So, conjuring with a root, still treat a root as a peer. People will come and command their roots. That's proper, but I want you to understand it's not commanding like a master to a slave. It's commanding like a general to his army. Okay, when you command your roots in a conjuration, you're not there to dominate it, because you should be vibing with it already. You're gonna give it the breath of life. You're gonna give it your spirit to be alive. So you're already bound to it. Okay? So when you conjure with that root, it's more about inspiring it in a way. Again, it's the way a general gives commands or gives orders. They should be clear and concise. They should be sufficient to fully inspire both direction and commitment. Okay? Then you have to do that for your roots. But it's from a place of cooperation, and in the case of a root, probably more so than a general. Well, actually, probably a good general does do it from that place of parity, of meeting as respectful peers. So that's the idea. And that was with all materia, right? Anything you're working, I don't care if it's a root, oil, a dime, an object, anything, a bone. That's how you interact with it. And that's how you can conjure with it. You can make a deal. Let's make a deal. That's the name of the game. Let's make a deal. You can help me, I can help you. It's easy for me, and the basic principle here is it's easy for me to come by some things, it's easy for you to come by some things. I give you what's easy for me, you give me what's easy for you. This is good, right? It's like one guy has a cow, the other guy's got a fishing net. So the one guy's got more milk than he knows what to do with, and the other guy goes out and fishes every day, and he can't eat all those fish. So it makes sense. Versus the guy who has the cow, if he wants to go try to get a fish, it's going to take him all day, and he'll be lucky if he catches one. And the guy with the fishing net, if he wants milk, he can squeeze as many fish as he wants. He ain't getting any milk. So that's the spirit of conjuration. That's why it's important to know what spirit you're conjuring with for what. Right? You don't go to the guy with the fishing net looking for some milk. So this is you got to choose the spirit you're working with. And you got to know what it's interested in. That's the two, I guess, main points on conjuration I want to be the takeaway today. yeah, so I don't know if anyone has questions. Otherwise, it now is nearly midnight here, and I do have to get to my much neglected altars and tend to my conjurations. But I do have about 10-15 minutes if anyone's got questions. Otherwise, I'll again hype the class tomorrow / tonight if you're watching this on Friday. Ritual Craft in Denver. We're doing altar workings, and should be a really good class. And then next Tuesday, so in like 3 days, I really got to get this PowerPoint done. Jeez. This conjuration class, which I'm very excited to be doing. And I'm expecting... I got to make sure that I can light cigars in the shop. It hasn't been discussed yet. I'm expecting we'll do hands-on conjurations in the room, with some roots at least from the shop. If someone needs help with a gin in the chat, yeah, I'm still learning about it, to be honest with you. I would say holler at me in about 12 weeks, and I hope to be a little more conversant, or at least have built a relationship with some experts. But gin magic is definitely the tradition of my own ancestors, so something I both intend to and need to learn about. So holler at me then. Yeah, guys, other than that, I appreciate y'all tuning in. Wow. Well, you know what? Then email me or get a burner. Email me, hoodoomoses@gmail.com. No DMs anyway, so you shouldn't be messaging me. So maybe the gin just follows rules, because gins like to follow rules too. But yeah, email me, hoodoomoses@gmail. Guys, if you need workings, I am booked up as fuck, but I am referring to a close network of practitioners, and we are getting tuned up. If you're a worker and you're real about this, if you're a worker and you might consider yourself, I'll say this: there's a difference between a root worker and a root doctor. There's a difference between a conjure worker and a conjure doctor. If you're a doctor, I'm looking at people in this chat who I may think could fit into this paradigm. Please hit me up. Fuck the no DMs thing. Get at me. Because if you're a real worker doing real work, like a bunch of us are doing some real work together in various situations. We have, when real jobs come up, it's just good to know real workers who are prepared to do real work in different parts of the country. So please do hit me up. And I'm talking about, you know what I mean. Anyway, I thank you guys for tuning in. I probably will not do one tomorrow night. Maybe I'll go live during the class. That's cool for me to do. Maybe I'll just go live during the class. But so hopefully I'll see you then. Otherwise, maybe I'll just be so amped up from after the class, or maybe I'll be wiped out after the class. So we'll see. Feel free to comment on this, even though I said no DMs. Feel free to comment on this video if you guys have questions, especially if you have questions about anything I said in Conjuration and things of that nature. Please ask them to me, because it's going to help me make the class better, and then I can answer them in a subsequent video. Right on. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Ed's Manifesto, thank you for tuning in, sir. Again, I'm very, very, very excited to come see your class in Denver, and we definitely have to grab lunch and talk about some other stuff. All my friends, all my coworkers, all my clients, thank you guys for tuning in. Tori and Chick, you got to holler at me and we got to talk, because I might have some information for you. And yeah, dude, I was at the shop last night hanging out with John. Anyway, yes, hit me up. Everybody, I'll see you soon.